Welcome to Decker Tech. I'm Aaron Decker, and today we're doing Thuls. Finally, he's kind of been on the back burner, been last one to go because we've had a couple failed attempts at him. Every time I go to make a Thuls guide or Thuls video, there's always just something missing that I don't like, or some piece of the puzzle that I don't feel comfortable sharing the build and a guide for Thuls to everyone because I didn't enjoy the play pattern or it didn't work as intended. There have been a couple changes to Thuls over the years and to the game type that eventually I actually think I finally found a play pattern I like a lot. It's actually one of the most enjoyable builds that I've done, but I had to take a step back from trying to force poison or force dark. There's a lot of things that I was trying to make work that just wouldn't. And so I'm going to say this is a Thuls poison build because it is, but you may be surprised at how little poison plays a part and in the late game how it comes up. And to get to that, we really have to talk about poison. So poison here is easily the weakest way to deal damage in the game. Fight me on that, because even compared to dark and thorns, both those two are much more viable than poison, because it just 1 HP per charge at the end of the turn. And it's at that end of the turn part that'll get you so many times, because it can be dispelled off by your enemies. They take their whole turn. There's just so many little things that add up to make poison very weak in that regard. And if you look with restricted power on, and all my videos are going to be talking with restricted power on, because with restricted power off, everything works. Restricted power on, poison only stacks to 200, right? 200? I always think 1 or 200. 200. So that, if you can get to full stacks in the early game, that can kill off targets after they take the turn and don't dispel it. And in the late game, that's just not enough damage. So by itself, it's not a big deal. And compared to, like, say, fire or spark, it's actually not lowering the resistances of our monsters either. It's doing damage, but it's not lowering the resistances, and it doesn't scale up the more stacks you have. Like 50 poison is only 1 damage per stack, whereas 200 poison is 1 damage per stack. But burn, you know, is less than 1 per stack at 1, but at 200 it's more than 2 per stack. So just the idea that because it ignores resistances, it doesn't scale as well, and it doesn't help our other damage cards because of that. Like if you have burn or spark on a target, then all your lightning spells or fire spells are going to do more damage to that target. So it's helping you in that regard too. Not only is it doing damage itself, but it's amplifying damage, and poison just doesn't amplify damage on itself. So it's got a lot of check boxes that it's not feeling to be a viable damage team. Even building a Thorns team was easier than building a poison team if we're talking about higher difficulties. And the reason I'm going to keep harping on that is because sure, you could stack 1,000,000 poison on Archon without restricted power, but I could stack 1,000,000 burn or 1,000,000 bleed. Like, I could stack 1,000,000 crack and just punch Rin to death with 1 hit. Like, without restricted power, that's a whole different conversation. By different conversation, I mean a less restricted conversation. The whole point of these guides is to give you something that'll work on all difficulties, that'll scale up to the high madness, that if you play it on a lower difficulty or in another situation, it'll be just as strong as I give it to you now, or stronger, right? So if it's viable in the situation here at Madness 14, I'm just doing 6 and 8 because I want all the restrictions here, and I'm not going to do rare cards. Just give me a little bit of wiggle room with some gold and hit points so that I can make mistakes and give a more broad approach to this build. But the whole point is this will work here, so it'll work everywhere else here. Whereas if I try to force just poison without the way that we've done it, that's not going to be the case. And so with that, let's talk about how we're going to be using poison in this build. So if I go to where we're talking about cards, poison. So this is Thuls, so we're looking at scout stuff. And you see there are a bunch of melee attacks that apply poisons. Bane will go off of poison, that's pretty cool. Blade Dance, Blade Furley, they apply poison, but to get them to stack decent amounts, we have to be playing multiple cards. We have to have lots of poison stacks, bonuses, because these only apply 1 base. And then we might be like using a poison catalyst to double it, or where's the other one? Poison blood. Poisonous blood. Like if we did one of these, the Blade Dance with bleed on it, or the Blade Flurry with bleed on it, we could also maybe double dip and bring more poison in this way. But the whole point of all that is like I'm spending so many cards and resources on my Thuls to make that happen, when instead what we could be doing, and this is the real kicker, where to go. I can get there, I promise. Right here, bam. These are the two cards we're going to be working with. Fan of Knives. So the yellow Fan of Knives says, hey, how much sharp we have, we can apply poison. Hits everyone. Nice, not just single target. It scales really well on its own if we're just using sharp. So we can use sharp as a stepping stone to get us into the late game and have this Fan of Knives just be mowing down everything. And while it's mowing everything down, it's going to start applying poison. And between our Fan of Knives, and we're going to have Thuls, not Thuls, Neglect, add some poison through his way, and we'll get to that in a second. Between those ways, we'll start to get full stacks of poison, and then we're going to monopolize on that poison with Neurotoxin, which is a big deal on damage when we have max stacks of poison. You'll also note that it double dips in the damage, so if I have Bless or Sharp affecting my mind damage, because Gustav can make Sharp affect mind damage, now I'm also getting the bonuses of my Sharps and Bless doubled from doing, 7 mind plus X mind, so that's double dipping there. And I'm allowing that great stacks of poison that we've put up with Fan of Knives and with Neglect to do a massive hit with these neurotoxins. And top cherry on the cake, I'm telling you, this is a complex puzzle to find a build that I liked. We also have this, if you notice, neurotoxin is a skill, and Thuls here, I know I'm doing this kind of out of order from my normal guides. Thuls here has a really interesting and unique level 5 that says, hey, you don't lose stealth when you play a skill. Well, it turns out, if we stack a lot of stealth, we stack a lot of poison, then on the final fight, like this is a level 5 talent, so we only really get a benefit on the final floor of the game. Twins is the earliest you can have this talent. So for the Archon fight, or for Hans, we get all this poison stacked up on him, and then we do Neurotoxin from stealth. We don't lose the stealth, and you either do another Neurotoxin or you just put more stealth on yourself in past turns. So you're only playing 2 cards a turn, but man, are they big, powerful cards. So that whole long escapade was me saying, poison sucks. But Thuls has a really cool play pattern that involves poison, and it is not by using Envenom or Black Talents. So let's get now to the talents for Thuls. So starting talent. At start of combat, gain 2 stealth. You will never use this ability. The optimal play pattern for Thuls does not include coming out with a combat card on turn 1, because this has to be your very first card of the game needs to be an attack or a heal for this stealth to be useful. Even once we have Veil of Shadows, our very first turn and our very first card is not going to be an attack. We're going to still try to buff ourselves in some way so that future attacks are stronger, and then we're just going to re-stealth and do our attack. So it's basically as if we don't have this passive, and I'll get more into that play pattern later, but consider this not there, because if you try to play into this, that's just a trap and will lower your damage in a fight. 99 times out of 100 times, this is not a good thing to use in adventure mode. Obelisk mode might be a little different. For level 2, Black Talons looks nice and pretty, but it requires, it only lasts 1 turn. It goes into poison and dark, which is really not that viable. It does shadow damage, which we don't have really much way of scaling in this build. Yes, if you get sharp, increases shadow damage, this can be pretty strong. But for us to start getting big benefits from this, you'll want to, like, it's a better boost in the early game than Subterfuge, but in the late game, it's not as strong as just having the plus stealth charges. Both of these are actually on par with each other. You're welcome to try them both. I recommend Subterfuge just for ease of play and not trying to be baited into a weird play pattern with your 1 turn's Black Talons. It does a lot of damage, but I like Subterfuge a lot better just because we're trying to get these extra stealth charges as we get into the acts 3s and 4s of the game. Level 3, we have Envenom, which says poison, which does not scale very well. This says plus 3 damage to all your attacks, but it says plus 3 damage, not plus 3 damage benefited by powerful or vulnerable or etc, etc. I'm going to harp on it at least 2 more times that poison is a weak mechanic. And then we have Momentum, which says, hey, gain 3 extra energy and gain 6 powerful, which you may know those are universally, I want to say powerful abilities to have, because the powerful will help scale us up a lot faster, and scouts do not have access to powerful in any of their cards other than 1 song. So for Thuls to have access to powerful in this manner, that'll help out a lot. And then of course, 3 extra energy means much more attacks that we can play. So momentum will be our level of choice here. Level 4, Deadly Strike says more damage, which lasts 24 uses, which is fairly good. But I'm going to say that Hidden Hand is going to be a smoother play pattern for us, because the idea is that by the time we're getting into this late game, we want to dump our entire hand and go through our entire deck in the first turn, and then if we get to a turn 2 or turn 3, we only have 1 or 2 cards left that we will just consistently play with Veil of Shadows to good effect. So the Hidden Hand helps you get through your first turn, get through your entire deck, gives you some energy, and most importantly, this is another source of powerful. So if for some reason you can't kill everything off on turn 1, you could save Hidden Hand for turn 2 and have access to 10 powerful. Or his starting card, let's look at his starting card. Well, his starting card is also his other source of powerful. So he has uniquely 2 sets of powerful that only he has access to with Hidden Hand and his starting card. And then as a scout, a melee scout, he has access to it here. So we want to utilize as many of those as we can. And then last but not least, Wide Sleeves just says, hey, if you play small weapons, you get more small weapons. No small weapon scales in any way, shape, or form. For a level 5 talent, this is easily one of the weakest ones in the game. And Veil of Shadows, this is the most cool and unique one to Thuls. This is the, how do we say it, the class dream of a scout assassin sort of thing. Just this idea that we can attack from and in stealth and not lose stealth. I say attack from stealth because we're going to use a skill that does damage. So this is really good. This is also a great way if you deviate from this build any to not play the neurotoxin at the end. You could still just build up stealth through 2 or 3 stealth cards that are skills or enchantments that will not break your stealth, so you'll be able to stack stealth higher. Because usually what happens is stealth is once you have it, you have to attack with it the very next time. And this Veil of Shadows just opens up more possibilities to maybe get more than 3 or 4 stacks of stealth at a time. You can have like 12 to 20 and then hit someone with a Fan of Knives or Neurotoxin, and it's a pretty big deal. This is Thuls' version of Fury for our power scaling in the late game. That was a little long of an intro because, man, Thuls has been a journey for me, okay? Thuls has been a journey. So let's get into his starting deck. So this is where we're at after modifications. We're going to take out the Viper Strikes because they cost 1 energy and they only do 1 point of damage when we talk about Sharp. We're keeping in the Poison Darts for now because they're 0 cost and source of 1 point, I say 1 point of damage. I mean, this does Sharp damage. This does slashing damage to 4 targets. So that's 4 points of damage. And Dual Strike says slashing and piercing to 1 target. So this is going to be 2 points because what we're going to do is we're going to put Sharp on Thuls. That'll increase his slashing damage and his piercing damage. So basically 1 point in Sharp will increase Dual Strike by 2, our Blade Dance by 4, our Poison Dart by 1. So I'm going to refer to that a lot here of how many instances of hits or damage these spells and abilities will do. And it's all going back to how much Sharp or Bless we have and how much we can manipulate our damage with that. We're taking out Blurs because who wants to spend energy on stealth and evasion? Thuls will never be taking damage really, so evasion is just wasted on him. And there are better sources of stealth, ones that give us Sharp and draw us cards. Like, compare a yellow Camouflage to a yellow Blur and you'll just be like, why would I ever play Blur? And then Ambush, we're going to keep Ambush for now just because I didn't have any other cards to replace it with. If you're looking at a lower difficulty where you can buy rares right away, you're actually going to pick up Fan of Knives right now. We'll wait until Act 2 for those of us that can't do it, because what we're looking for is things that have Slash and Pierce. Let's see if I can type this in correctly. Piercing. So these are all the abilities that double dip in slashing and piercing. So if you look at this Fan of Knives, this has 8 hits because it hits 4 monsters, but it does Sharp and it does piercing and slashing, so it double dips in Sharp. So basically every point of Sharp or Bless will increase this by 8, which scales much faster and much stronger. Fan of Knives is the end all be all of any Sharp Thuls build because he doesn't really lean all the way into slashing like Andrin does, and he doesn't lean all the way into piercing like Sylvie does. So Fan of Knives is very strong and was easily the only way to play Sharp before they added the Sharp perks that allow you to focus on one side or the other. So if you can buy rares in the starting town, definitely Ambush should be Fan of Knives. That will happen in town 2, 100% for us. Let's see, where are we at here? And then, yep, we're just going to fill our deck with as many dual strikes as we can, get them down to 1 cost instead of 2, because this is the bread and butter of double dipping into Sharp, and if we get decent amounts of Sharp on ourselves, then we will win easy peasy with this. And then, of course, you want to find as much Sharp for yourself as possible. The really only viable ways for that is going to be these Chance of Accuracy. We're going to get as many of those as we can. They can be 0 cost, on self, and burn, and vanish, I mean. So, checks all the boxes. Camouflage is stealth and sharp. Fantastic card. And Sharpening Knife's the only other one that we can get ourselves sharp, but it always costs 2 energy. It's a small weapon. It only does 1 point of damage, one instance of damage, so it doesn't quite fit the bill. And yep, one last thing to talk about is card draw. So I mentioned we want to get through our deck as quick as possible, and we want our deck as consistent as possible. But we kind of also want it to vanish, and we don't want to disrupt our play pattern of going into and out of stealth. So although Deflect is basically reducing your deck size by 1, it also requires you to play a card to see all your cards, which... take my word for it in the fact that deflects make Thuls feel more awkward. You can definitely find ways to play around deflects, but overall I would say skip deflect. Don't even think about it. Don't worry about it. You can fill your deck in much more efficient ways for a Thuls play pattern. So although deflect is a fantastic card, I do not recommend it for Thuls. You're welcome to try it, and maybe you'll run into and notice what I do, that it hinders the most efficient play pattern for Thuls, because we want to draw as few cards in our turn as possible. We want to plan out our turn around how much stealth we have in our hand and how much AoE, and deflects kind of disrupt that pattern a lot. I would still recommend setup, just because between the two, setup will vanish and it digs deeper than deflect. It's not just a filler card that's reducing our deck size. It's also a deck smoothing card where I can dig deep into the bottom of my deck, pull back, and then I can craft my hand a little better to fit of how much stealth do I need, how much AoE do I need, that sort of thing. And the last one I didn't talk about is multi-shot here. Blade Dance and multi-shot are just going to be 4 instances of damage. Multi-shot's a filler card until later in the game when we'll replace it with more Blade Dances or Fans of Knives. But for now, since I can only craft 1 uncommon, I will gladly pick up multi-shot for now because it's still 2 energy for 4 hits, just like Blade Dance. Later in the game, though, I'm going to get momentum for my talent. That'll make the melee attack side of Blade Dance better. It'll now just cost 1 energy for 4 hits, which will then, of course, be twice as good as this multi-shot. So we'll eventually cut the multi-shots, but it's a stepping stone for as we progress through the deck. What else we got here? Feel like that talks about everything here for Thuls' deck. The idea is we want to get as much sharp on ourselves as possible. As you can see, we really only have 2 instances of our sharp ourselves, this Chant of Accuracy and this Camouflage. So that means we really have to rely on someone else to do it. Any scout or warrior can give us sharp. The best one, of course, is going to be Gustav, because he comes equipped with extra Chance of Accuracy. We're just going to look at all these other characters' starting decks, kind of give you an idea of what they're doing to support Thuls. The idea is Gustav here is our speed manipulation and giving us extra sharp and a source of powerful in the early game. Later, we don't need this Ode to War, but this is only here to give Thuls max powerful in the first act or 2 until he can start doing it himself when he has access to more of those sources of it that we talked about in the talents. Nesglect here is to give Inspire, cards, and energy. He's just here for cards and energy. So as much Inspire and whatnot here. Thuls will eventually be the key, the linchpin for us getting the poison going. And Magnus here is for as much vulnerable as humanly possible. And then let's go to perks for Thuls. So with this starting speed, Thuls is super fast. And that can be a problem if you're trying to get him to go last. So I put this 1 point of speed. It only costs 1 point. Doesn't cost 3. And it doesn't put him past Neglect here. So if I go to character sheet, Neglect is at a 13, even with max perks. So I do not want Thuls to be more than 4 faster than him. Otherwise, Gustav will have trouble getting Neglect in front of Thuls when I also need to speed up Thuls. Like, I'll do a whole video about speed manipulation, but the whole point is you don't want your damage dealer to be more than 4 speed ahead of all your supports, because otherwise you'll struggle to get your supports to go in front of them. So that puts Thuls here at 17, which is exactly where we want him. I wouldn't go higher than 17 because you also want to be slower than the Archon at the end of the game, who is at speed 19. And I do recommend that there's going to be one item we pick up that has +1 speed. So 17 is really the ceiling. I played him with and without the speed perk. I did enjoy having it more than not having it, but it was a very close tie between the two. So I would never pick up more than 1 speed on Thuls unless you are not trying to get speed manipulation to work, because otherwise Thuls will just have to, he'll take his first turn and then just wait until turn 2 to do all his damage, which is silly. We're only picking up the 1 point in poison because, like I said, Neglect will be applying most of the poison for us, and this is valuable because it is 1 point for 1, whereas this next one costs 3, and it's really not worth us to spend that deep into the poison tree. It is worth to go all the way into the slashing and piercing, as well as the mind damage, though, because we want as much damage as possible for all of our spells. This mind damage we're only going to get value in Act 4 and later, but I still think it's worth it to pick that up. But the end all be all is definitely these slashing points and this sharp point. Doesn't matter who picks up this sharp one here, you just don't want your sharp to be purged accidentally. There's a couple fire mages that will purge sharp from you if you're not careful. And then of course powerful perks. So if you are comfortable enough with powerful, easily the best one is this right side one that says 10% per charge. With, like I said, Thuls being a scout and not having access to much ways to maintain his powerful or to create it, you do have to be careful that if you go to turn 2, turn 3, that you still have powerful both those turns. And if you don't feel comfortable managing that, go ahead, just go with this this middle one. This says it goes to 12 and it only decays 1 at a time. That is much easier to play, but less powerful to play. So I recommend, if you can manage it, go the 10 per stack and just make sure you're always keeping 10 stacks on Thuls every round. It does scale a lot faster and a lot better than the middle one. Oh, and last but not least, Bless. We do want Bless to double dip, or not double dip, 1.5 dip, sorry, to boost our damage a little bit more. We won't get much Bless until the late game with this comp, but that will be a big factor in a lot of our damage. And since we are double dipping in both slashing and piercing, neither of these sharp talents work for us because this would only be 1.5 instead of the 2 that we're getting by double dipping in both slashing and piercing for all our abilities. Yep. I think that covers everything with Thuls. Oh, last but not least, stealth. We're going to be relying on stealth. There is no plus stealth charges down here. If there was, I would pick that up. Otherwise, I'm actually between Gustav and him. I'm going to pick up both of these. The more resistances one, that one's just a little memey and fun for me in case I wanted to try a smoke bomb. But you definitely want this one that says, hey, instead of plus 20% per charge, it's plus 25% per charge, which, since we get that subterfuge ability in our talent tree, this can really add up really fast. And especially once you get to level 5 and you're keeping your stealth stacks, you scale pretty well in the end game. Yep. That is all for Thuls. Let's take a look at the other perks here. A little quicker here. Neglect is trying to go as fast as possible. Has +3 sight charges that decay at the end of turn because I don't need sight in this build. The sight in this build is only for healing from Neglect and to create poison through the clairvoyant scroll. I guess we should look at that now. So items, poison. Neglect is in this build specifically because you can guarantee pickup from the Spider Queen Eye, which says, hey, when you apply sight, you also apply poison. And anyone that's played Neglect knows Neglect puts out a lot of poison. And so the idea is that with this sight perk and with his level 3 talent, he is just going to be, he'll be dumping a couple hundred poison on the monsters in the first turn, which will then set up Thuls to do his damage via poison. Because oddly enough, the best poison applier is Neglect. If he has the Eye of the Spider Queen, which is why Neglect has all these plus charges perks. Neglect has plus charges on vulnerable, not really needed, but it is a viable option. And in the perks, if you copy my perks over, I will not have the mind damage in Neglect. That was a mistake. I was trying something, it didn't work out. Instead of picking these up, I recommend getting the 1 point in powerful, because Neglect will be applying powerful, and then just dumping some more into gold or defenses if you need them, because Neglect did not do much mind damage over the course of the game, and he doesn't need it. He's really only here for the insane charges, the sight charges, and the poison charges. And then, of course, Neglect does apply Bless, so you want plus Bless charges. Gustav. Gustav is here for Sharp and speed manipulation. He makes people go fast. He goes fast. He applies a little bit of sight. He applies a little bit of stealth, and I just wanted to fool around with this, which is honestly pretty, like, Thuls can get pretty invincible, but unless you have ways to get your whole team to stealth, you don't really need this. Gustav here is just picking up the vulnerable for the team, and the sharp for the team, the reinforced for the team. He is picking up powerful. You do want this. I would even recommend maybe trying going to the second one that says +1 charges here. Problem is it costs 3 points. Yes, it's more beneficial. In Act 1, this will definitely be a worthwhile perk. And by the time you get to Act 2, 3, or 4, he will not be applying as much powerful at that point, because Thuls will be able to do it himself, or Neglect will do it. And then Gustav can apply Bless at certain points of the game, so that's always good. And he applies Regen sometimes, so that's a decent pickup for just a 1 point in the tree. Mainly Gustav is here for speed. And then Magnus perks. Magnus is here to slow people down, to go fast. I actually, in my build, I'm going to say put all 3 points here for Magnus, but my gameplay was better when I had him with 0 speed perks, because I had accidentally forgot to turn him back on. And him going as slow as Thuls was actually perfect, because then I could get Magnus down to 18 speed, which was slower than Archon. And if I needed him to go faster, Gustav could take care of it. So the easier play pattern is to have Magnus as fast as possible, but a higher ceiling and a more difficult way to play is definitely going to be bringing Magnus down to 18 speed by having no speed perks, and to keep him there at the same speed of Thuls and manipulate your team order as needed there. Otherwise, he's here for slowing and marking. Immune to mark is just nice for comfort's sake. He's here to shield the team, because he'll try to go fast and block for us in case we go to turn 2 where the monsters take a turn. He sometimes applies sharp, so 1 point here does not cost us much. He is here to apply Fortify for the Archon fight, and to apply Reinforce at all times. This +1 perk is really nice just in case you don't draw Reinforce on your turn 1. That way Magnus can keep his Reinforce to round 2, because without this, he starts with Reinforce on his starting turn, or start of the round. But if he takes his turn and doesn't reapply it, he'll lose it. So this just helps him maintain Reinforce if he misses on the first turn. And yeah, that's everything for Magnus. All right, and I think we're ready to do our first combat. Hey guys, this might be a longer video, but it's been a long time coming, so I think the Thuls deserves just a little bit of extra love. You know what I mean? Alright, so normal play patterns here. I actually want to give cards to Neglect. I think it's 1 and 1 here. I don't remember. See, because if Magnus was slower, he'd still be faster than Thuls, and if Gustav needed to, he can speed him up to be in front of these guys. It's just nice to have Magnus up front since he has slows, and then Gustav right there too to speed everyone up. So Gustav's got to find the speed for Neglect. There's a speed for Neglect. I have 1, 2, 3 energy I have to use. 4. So I gotta get rid of this, and then powerful here, speed here, sharp here. And if I had more energy, I could go deeper for the other sharp, but I can't, so I will pass. Neglect here is just here to apply the cards. Now, one thing with this delay response, it's a little finicky to play with. If your target is either immune to speed or doesn't need his speed, you can do this and then speed him back up with clarity. If they already have fast, that's a problem, because delay response will remove the fast and then clarity won't put them back up to where they were. So what we actually need to sometimes do is put a detoxify on them, then the delay response. And it's a weird play pattern that you have to play around because I have no mages and I want to give energy to my Thuls, but I mean, it works, right? I want as much AoE as possible and as much sharp. Let's dig a little deeper, though. I want to smack the Betty around a bit. Let's see. I don't need the ambush. That's just a filler card. AoE, AoE. This all looks good. Put a little damage on Betty just because I can. Alright, now, do not be baited into my stealth. I do not need to play this AoE or this AoE because I have stealth here, I have stealth here, I have sharp here, I have powerful here, and I have sharp here. So, I'm going to tell you all the variables you got to look at, then I'll give you a good rule of thumb of how to play his turnout, and then I'll tell you about the exceptions. So, things we got to pay attention to. We got to get as much powerful as possible. We want to see how much sharp we have and get as much sharp as possible. Then we want to pair up as many stealths with as many AoEs as we can, or whatever the most efficient card is for that combat. Since I have 4 monsters alive, it's going to be my Blade Dance and my multi-shot. And as I said, I have 1 stealth here and 1 stealth here, so I have 2 stealths, 2 AoEs. That's perfect. So I'm just going to apply as much sharp to myself as possible through my chants here. I'd also put my enchantments up if I had subterfuge or stuff like that for Thuls. And so that's all my buffs here. Now I have my stealths one, and I need to prioritize which one's going to be better. This one gives me 5 powerful, and this one gives me 2 sharp. The fact that I'm not at max powerful means this one will be better. Then AoE, stealth, AoE. And now we're just in cleanup mode where I just hit things until they die. Ta-da! Alright. Now the only exceptions to that is if I'm already at max powerful, I don't have many extra sources of bless or enchantments I need for my first hit, and then I have more AoEs than I have stealth in my hand. In that case, you can use your starting stealth. But like I said, that's like 1 out of 100 chance that you'll ever do that. So rule of thumb is play all of your buffs. Sorry, ignore your starting stealth. Play all of your buffs. Then pair up stealth to AoE and prioritize the stealth that gives you the better benefit of powerful or sharp. And usually if you're not at max powerful, that's going to be powerful. But use your judgment there. And the more experience you have with it, the easier that will be to pick up. Yes. If you have any questions, let me know. And that's Combat Act 2 Decklist. Alright, so in Act 2, like I said, Thuls here. Actually, let's just look at it this way. We are now picking up that fan of knives. I found a couple extra multi-shots and blade dances in Act 1, so I will pick those up gladly. Right now, the weakest cards in my deck are going to be this Poison Dart and these 2 multi-shots. Reason is, it's because these multi-shots are going to go down in value once I hit level 3 and I get momentum. And then, of course, Poison Dart is just not doing nearly as much damage as Dual Strike because I'm still relying a lot on Sharp. And the poison aspect of Poison Dart is weak. And yes, it costs 1 less energy, but because I'm hitting level 3 soon, suddenly these Dual Strikes cost 0 to do 2 instances of damage, where Poison Dart is only 0 for 1 instance of damage. So I eventually just want my decks to be, you know, Stealth, Dual Strikes, Blade Dances, and Fans of Knives. Eventually these Dual Strikes will get cut out by the end of the game, but for right now they are one of my strongest cards. So weakest ones, Darts and Multi-Shots, remove those if possible. I want a lot more chance of accuracy, I want a little bit more stealth, and I want as many Fan of Knives as possible at this point in the game. And then, of course, the other guys' decks here, just a quick glance at them, because they are doing their normal thing. All right, Act 2 deck list, items. So now we're on to items. I already said Nezglect is in the group because he is picking up that Poison Eye Weird. I went to the Poison Axe, I'm in the green biome, and I'm going down to the Spider Nest to pick that up ASAP, because that is when I can start playing with Poison. Otherwise, Thuls here, you notice I got rid of his Poison starting item because it doesn't really matter and do anything, guys. It's pretty useless. And it also makes it so your poison is more likely to be dispelled because you applied poison at the beginning of combat instead of on a later turn, which is hilarious and funny to me. Items we're looking for. We're looking for things that give powerful, because remember, we're trying to maintain our powerful. So there's not many things here that'll work for us. There's going to be the Titan Gauntlets off the Hydra. That's a pretty solid pickup. And there's going to be the... Oh, you can't see it here, but there's the Lava Amulet. What's the Lava? I hate that it doesn't show up. The Lava Crystal. And this one will apply powerful as well. So those are 2 guaranteed ways to pick it up through items. That'll make your powerful game a lot easier. And then, of course, one really strong thing is going to be Sharp. And ironically, some of the best Sharp items are going to be commons if you can corrupt them. For Thuls, you're specifically looking for one that has Sharp and slashing and piercing and Sharp charges. So either this Dagger or this Morningstar are great pickups for Thuls. Honestly, if I could pick one of these up, I'd give them to Gustav first, or whoever's applying your Sharp to Thuls, because later on, Thuls has an option, if you can find it, of a much better card for him, and that's going to be its Nether. This is the end-all be-all best card for this Thuls build, because it does damage with hit, apply more damage. So it has another instance of damage every time he does an attack. It also says all damage types, which means when you transition from slashing piercing damage to mind damage, it's affecting both of them. And it's also doing mind damage with its hit, which we're already benefiting from Sharp because we have Gustav. So, like, boom, all the boxes checked. It is a mythic, though. You have to get lucky into it. I found it both in my games that I did recently, so I'm like, it was just night and day, so much better to have that. Otherwise, you're looking for anything that has both slash and pierce, which is going to be this set of items here. So Venom Dagger is a fairly solid pickup, and you're already going to the Spider Queen already. Just remember that the plus poison charges here is a little bit of a bait. You're not applying that much poison, at least not that many instances of poison. You're applying a lot with your Fan of Nice, but it's all in one chunk, so you don't get as much mileage out of this plus poison charges. But it is both slashing and piercing, and if you pick a different talent, you might do the vulnerable. So there's definitely cases for it. These are all good ones here. And then, of course, anything that says all damage, which is a big variety of cards, because those ones will be ones that'll affect you, help you in the mid game and the late game. Unfortunately, a lot of these are late game ones, and none of them are nearly as good as Netherblade. But that's basically what you're looking for. Anything that has to do with sharp charges or all damage types. And that covers the weapons. And then otherwise, stealth. That's going to be our big bad boy here. You want ones, so every turn gain stealth. The corrupted version is really nice. +1 charges, very nice. Combat start, this is the one that's not as good. Because, again, remember, we're already not using our at combat start stealth. So this is a built-in talent that Thuls has that I've already told you is worthless. So we don't want this one. But this one's really good. And if you could get a corrupted the 1, yes, please, 100%. It might screw up your speed order maybe, but every turn stealth, and we're doing we have extra energy. Energy is one of Thuls' weaknesses we're about to get to. And then, of course, Assassin Tools is the most perfectest item. I've rarely ever find it for myself. I would put this probably above the Netherblade and how valuable it is to you. But, I mean, if you get it, great. If you don't, you can live without it. Just because, you know, it's the perfect one. So you'll never see it. At least that's my, my Murphy's Law says the thing I want the most is the thing I won't get. And then, of course, last but not least, we want things that reduce the energy cost of things. And for us, that's actually going to be this handbook or this advanced handbook. Because remember I said in the late game, we're going to be using that nether toxin or the neurotoxin. It's that skill that we're using it as an attack. And we want to be able to play two of them every turn, which is a total cost of 6 energy, which means we need a way either to consistently get energy every turn from our team or to reduce their cost, which these handbooks will do. Obviously, the advanced handbook is a permanent reduction, and the normal handbook is temporary. Either will do, either is great. Of course, Cloud Song, I mean, it's a mythic that's fantastic too. So, those ones are good. You can't trigger Mountain King very well, and this would be a good reason to run Deflect, but again, you can't use Deflect because in your final play pattern, you can only play 2 cards a turn, and so you don't want to have Deflect in your hand. Yes. And then Destiny is always a big pickup. Yep. I think that covers it for items. I know I'm a little excited, a little antsy. I've been trying to make this video for a while. What can I say? All right, items, pets. So check out all the pets. Betty, I think, is probably the best one for Thuls, just all around. Eventually, it'll be increased damage because it's mind damage. You'll eventually increase that with Gustav through his talent, which, by the way, I've mentioned it like 3 times and I haven't said it here. Shrill Tones, pretty required for this build. Gustav and Neglect, kind of a big deal. Anyway, well, I was at equipment. Betty's great. Anyone that does slashing or piercing damage is also pretty good. You don't have to worry about silencing yourself on enchantments, so any pet that does damage is a good pickup for Thuls. Neglect, of course, is the holder of Oculi in any run that he's in. Gustav here is just because he's doing the fast thing, and then Magnus has got Asmodee because Magnus here is doing the slow and mark thing, so this is a really nice pickup. This also is really good that if Magnus is going first, he'll apply 3 debuffs, which means vulnerable will not be dispelled by the tree, assuming you hit the tree with this. So, yes. Or Belfie, or any single target boss fight that has a dispel of any sort. Belfie doesn't have a dispel. What am I talking about? Alright, that was it for pets. I don't think there's any other pets that are really worth noting for this build specifically. Yes, Leanti and Slimy. Slimy does poison stacks, but if anyone's going to pick that up, it's going to be one of your supports, not Thuls. And Leanti does, I believe, slashing damage, piercing damage. So this is a pretty good pickup. It has poison, but remember, you're not relying on Thuls to do the poison. Not this poison stacking, because his claim to fame for poison is this upgraded fan of knives that says, poison to everyone for large amounts. Yes. Don't mind me. And, yeah, that was Act 2. We don't have a combat here. Act 4 Decklist. So in Act 4, we now have all the pieces come together. So you see, this is a corrupted camouflage, but even if it weren't corrupted, I recommend the yellow one that vanishes. 1, it's better because it draws a card. 2, we don't want to rely on this camouflage for our stealth for the Archon fight, because for the Archon fight, we'd rather run Shadow Step, because Shadow Step replaces itself energy-wise by giving us Energized back. Yes, I don't like the fast on it. That's actually a handicap to it. But the white or blue Shadow Step will be best for the Archon fight, because then we can get into this play pattern where if we want more stealth, we can play Shadow Step Neurotoxin, and if we have enough stealth and we have enough energy to play 2 Neurotoxins, we can play 2 Neurotoxins. Now, you can only craft 1 Neurotoxin, so there is that. I'm pretty sure you craft it. Pretty sure I crafted one of these. Or I got lucky into 2 of them. But you do have lucky into the second one. But even if you don't have 2 Neurotoxins, a really fantastic play pattern is Shadow Step, Neurotoxin. Pass turn. That's all you're doing in the Archon fight. And you want this blue Neurotoxin so that it doesn't vanish. It applies Insane Charge, it applies Poison, so it keeps the stacks going on the target. It double dips in our Sharp. It is boosted by our Poison, which we're going to have lots of. And it's a skill. Specifically, it's a skill that really plays into this Veil of Shadows that we play for the final floor. And it's so much fun to just say, Shadow Step, Neurotoxin, pass turn. Just every turn. And so you notice everything else here vanishes. Like, this Fan of Knives is going to be upgraded or corrupted to vanish, and then I'm just left with Shadow Step Neurotoxin, and I can eventually upgrade this one to a blue. So I only ever have 3 cards, so I'm guaranteed to have all my options that I need, and I just play Stealth Toxin, and Archon will just fall over, and it's funny, and it's hilarious, and it's great fun. But you don't get that talent until the final floor, so it is what it is, but it's very fun to play. And up until that point, all you're doing on Thuls is doing Stealth Fan of Knives, and everything's dead. So, it's a fun play pattern. We'll look at the other guys' decks at this point, just because. You can pause and take a look if you have any questions or concerns there. And this Carnage is supposed to be upgraded to the one that has Vulnerable. That's the only reason it's there. But I can't afford it with shards and gold for this run specifically, because on these runs, I'm not allowed to use divinations because that's too much variables to add in for your guys' games, so I'm handicapped sometimes. And, yep. Let's go to combat. Ready. I think... Some corruptions are not a problem. You know the hardest corruption is actually downwind? Go figure. Alright, let's see what do we got here. So I need to thrice myself. Don't want behind a setup. Draw. There's the setup. How many cards do I have left? 4. I want all of them, so we'll go Vigilance. Setup. I don't need the Ballad, and I don't think I need Celerity. Let's double check. He's going... I do need a speed up. I do need the Celerity. I need the Celerity. Which means I can't have a Chant of Accuracy. Very sad. So I have to Celerity to get Magnus going forward, and I have to Chant of Initiative to get Nez to go in front of Thuls, and then Magnus will slow down the Gunner, so we will all go first, and then I need to Encore. In more dangerous fights where I'm going to go turn 2, of course I would keep the Encore. I would play Encore last on my turn so that my next turn I could play a stronger spell twice. Draw cards. Draw cards. There's Mahal. He also has this Endless Bag to make sure he doesn't whiff on his Vulnerable on turn 1 and slows, but you can normally play around that. Let's see, Vulnerable. Cards to Neglect. I've got enough energy for everything. That did absolutely nothing, but I played it because I can. Alright, so as you notice, just Oculi did 10 poison, so it's kind of a big deal. Bam! Played a skill. 10 more poison. Yep. This Spider Eye Queen, pretty good, especially if you've got plus sight charges going on. What else we got here? So, delay response. He is immune to speed. Oh, I forgot about this with items. So, Thuls here. I highly recommend if you're pairing him with Neglect to go Steadfast Boots, because then you can just play delay response on him all day, and you don't have to worry about detoxifies or clarities or stuff like that to clear the slow, because he's now immune to slow, guys. It's pretty cool. Anyway, let's see. More skills to possibly pay some bills. And if I'm gonna check my energy, but if I'm gonna play spells, I'm gonna play the Chosen One first, maybe. But I might not have enough energy here. I've only got, what, 2 energy left, plus a skill. So skill, energy, energy. So we'll say no to the Anthem. Prophecy here. So I could go skill. And I could either put up a bunch of poison or I could give more cards to Thuls. I don't think it really matters too much. Let's go with poison. I don't want to trigger my Night Terror with my Clairvoyance. I want to save that for Thuls. So Clairvoyance first, then Night Terror on whoever has the most sharp and or mind resistances or most hit points. All of those are Rocco here, except for the mind. And then Clarity to Thuls, give a little more cards. Alright, rule of thumb. Ignore my stealth. Add my buffs, and then pair up stealth with big hits. So ignoring my stealth, adding buffs. Okay. Oh, dig. I also forgot to say you have to dig. So before I pair stuff up, I might want to dig. I've got 6 cards left. My Phantom Knives are down there. So this is kind of a tricky situation where I'm going to say I'm going to waste this camouflage just for the card draw. Just because I want to be a little deeper to get to the stinking Phantom Knives. And see, if I hadn't done it in this order, I wouldn't hit a Phantom Knives. And I barely only hit 1. Also, I do have the backup, I forget. I do have Hidden Hand, so I didn't technically have to do it the way I did, but, you know, habits are as habit does. A little more buffs, and then big old stealth, do Phantom Knives. A little more stealth to do, oh bam, delete Rocco. And Hidden Hand triggers, I have all the cards left in my deck again. I have 9 energy. I could Phantom Knives twice, or I could Neurotoxin twice. You know, which is more entertaining to me? I don't know. I don't know. Ooh, this one's pretty good. And I can even stealth Neurotoxin. Like, look at this. Look at this. I can click here. Bam. Oh no, Gunner, what are you going to do? And remember, most of that poison is from Thuls. Some of it, I mean, not from Thuls, it's from Neglect. Some of it's from Thuls, but most of it's from Neglect. Neglect should be able to get your enemies up to 200 poison by turn 2. And on turn 1, Thuls will be doing Phantom Knives things to get there himself. And yeah, that's it for combats. Let's talk about viable team comps for Thuls. So, with this play pattern, this one specifically requires Gustav and Neglect. Gustav, because he applies a lot of Sharp, and he has this talent right here that says Shrill Tones, which means Sharp increases mind damage, which feeds into the Neurotoxin, which is a lot of fun. It also requires Neglect, because Neglect with the Spider Eye Queen and his resourceful talent give him the easiest and most efficient application of poison to all the targets. And it's very, very easy to do, and Nezglect is just a powerful hero otherwise. So just picking up that Spider Eye Queen really empowers Thuls. And then, of course, Thuls does his thing. But if you want to do some variations on this and either ditch the Nezglect or the Gustav, what you can do is bring in anyone to bring in Sharp and just do a very similar build here and maybe not dip into Neurotoxin. Or you could go without Nezglect, not have as much poison, not dip into Neurotoxin. Basically, you're left with relying on Fan of Knives, and what instead of having these Neurotoxins, you just keep back the his starting cards, the Slash, Pierce. You would just rely on cards like Dual Strikes and Eviscerates. Unfortunately, the Eviscerate costs a lot of energy, so yeah, these would be your go-to cards if you're not transitioning into Neurotoxin. I'm talking really fast today, guys, because I'm trying to get this out today. Yeah, and the faster I talk, the less likely I'm going to have breathing problems. Yep. So I was talking about team comps. Yeah. So you can find other ways to do poison. There are ways to go from like bleed into poison or wet into poison. All of these ones require more steps and more people, so it's a lot more constraints on your team comp. That's why this is the one I specifically recommend if you're going to do this Thuls Sharp poison build. If you're just doing a straight Sharp build, you just need someone to apply Sharp to you. So that really opens up your team comp. And yeah. Sharp or Bless. You can do this exact same build with someone that applies Bless. So instead of Nezglect and Gustav, you could just have like a Maluka or a Reggie and just have them doing the healing spells thing to get Bless on you. Reggie requires a little manipulation, but go check their guides. They both have good ways to get Bless going on them. I mean, Otis just spamming AoE Bless. It takes a little longer, but any way that you can get Sharp or Bless on Thuls will make this go really well. Bless has the added benefit of helping Neurotoxin without having Gustav's talent required. So you could just bless Thuls a bajillion times to get the same results. Unlock. To get Thuls, Act 1. He's visible on the map. You go talk to him. He sends you to the Spider Queen. Hopefully I showed that to you on this video. That's the green biome, bottom dungeon. You just go through the dungeon. If you get to the dungeon, you can't miss the Spider Queen because she's required to get out of the dungeon. So you just got to go to the green biome to unlock him. And new channel members. That is it for Thuls. If you like this guide, please let me know. Let me know what you liked about it and what you didn't like. The more feedback I have, the better I can improve these. And all of these videos are just, they're from suggestions from the player base or from viewers. So if you have anything you want to see that I haven't created yet, best way to make it happen is to let me know. Either comments are really accessible. Other than that, let's talk about channel memberships. I have opened up channel memberships. There's some more details in there if you want to dig to why I've done that. But basically, time and money are resources required to make videos, and if you want to see more videos, that's the easiest way to make that happen. We do have a new channel member, Charlie M. Usually what I'll do at this point, if you've applied to the membership level, the medium one, I mean 1, 5, and 10, or 1, 5, and 20 is what I think I have it set to. If you apply to the 5, you get a shout out with a comment. You can tell me what you like. Charlie, if you're watching this and you want to have something shown, let me know. It's not quite clear maybe that you can have that happen. But if you don't have a comment, I'll just mention your name and move on. If you do have a comment you want to show, let me know what it is and I'll share it with everyone. As long as it's not, profane or obscene, it'll happen. And yeah, I think that's everything I got. Coming up, I do have a speed manipulation video with making this Thuls deck and Gustav and talking about perks with Magnus and stuff. I have a lot of content now. I can really talk about the discussion I want about trying to manipulate your team's speed so that you can successfully play all of the Axe and then Archon, because in Archon, like, it's really funny. Up until the Archon fight, you want your team to go as fast as humanly possible all the time, always yes. But on the Archon fight, you want your damage dealer to go slower than the Archon. And you want to make sure you don't accidentally slow the Archon down with, like, say, I don't know, Asmodee. I did that a couple times. Like, it's just this idea that there's certain little tips and tricks you can do to make your run smoother, because you want to go as fast as humanly possible up until you get to Archon, and then you have to slow yourself down artificially or have it such that throughout the entire game you've been speeding yourself up in a way that you can now also be slower than Archon. So I can make a whole video about that. I'm talking way too much about it now as it is. As you can tell, I haven't talked to many human beings today, and there's a lot to say. Yep. Catch you later. Peace.